Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest living here in Austin, Texas, and have had the gift of recovery since December the 27th of 1972. It's coming up another year. Don't drink, go to meetings, stay sober. That's what happens. We are finishing up a series that I've been doing on a book called A Testament of Devotion. The author is Thomas R. Kelly. And if you've stayed with me through the series, I hope you've enjoyed it. This is a book that I've gone back to many, many times, and I thought it would be quicker. I figured I could skip some of the chapters, but in kind of getting ready for this thing, I had to go through them all. There was some real gems tucked away in each chapter, and wanted to share it with you guys. So we are finally at the last one. Kelly was a Quaker and a mystic and a philosopher and a teacher and all around great guy. The last chapter that we're going to cover today is called The Simplification of Life. And I couldn't help but think of Dr. Bob saying to Bill W., keep it simple. You know, this is a simple program for complicated people. And the Oxford Group people didn't have real steps. They had a process that people went through, but no steps. Wilson talked about there being 5 steps or 6 steps, a number of different ways that was looked at in the early days before he wrote the steps. And when he wrote them, he was trying to make sure that people didn't leave anything out. So he wanted to kind of go overboard with it. That had some real blessings to it, some benefit to it. But, you know, I've also met a lot of people who kind of get stuck in the steps and philosophize the hell out of the steps and miss their simplicity. So let's kind of keep that in mind when we're going through this chapter. That Dr. Bob's recommendation: keep this thing simple and don't complicate it. I've pulled out 9 quotes that I'm going to kind of concentrate on this episode. Very briefly, to kind of get us going, he talks about the demands of the world in the first few pages, that the outer world puts a lot of demands onto us. And we can get caught up with that, and we can think that if we simplify our lives, we're going to be better off. But he's saying all of the busyness and all the complications that are happening to us outside in the world, that's really not the problem. That the problem is really what's going on inside of us. So that it's an internal problem. And that kind of simplifies things for us. If we can get the internal right, the inner world right, then the outer world is going to keep chugging along, but it's not going to throw us. Stuff will come along and we'll be okay with it. Example: I just recorded this whole episode and forgot to press the button on the microphone. So 40 minutes down the drain. I could get very upset about that, but it was my problem, and I'm going to have to live with the consequences of it, as may you, because I may have to shorten this thing if my voice doesn't hold out. Anyway, problems always inside. Anytime we're disturbed, there's something wrong with us, and he's going to, I think, simplify this in a helpful way. So I think this is an important chapter in his book. Okay, let me go on reading some quotes here. He says, we Western peoples are apt to think our great problems are external, environmental. We are not skilled in the inner life, where the real roots of our problem lie. For I would suggest that the true explanation of the complexity of our program is an inner one, not an outer one. The outer distractions of our interests reflect an inner lack of integration of our own lives. We are trying to be several selves at once, without all ourselves being organized by a single mastering life, capital L, within us. Each of us tends to be not a single self, but a whole committee of selves. There's the civic self, the parental self, the financial self, the religious or spiritual self, the society self, the professional self, on they go. And each of ourselves is in turn a rank individualist, not cooperative, but shouting out his vote loudly for himself when the voting time comes. And all too commonly, we follow the common American method of getting a quick decision among conflicting claims within us. It is as if we have a chairman of our committee of the many selves within us who does not integrate the many into one, but who merely counts the votes at each decision and leaves disgruntled minorities. The claims of each self are still pressed. We are distraught. We feel honestly the pull of many obligations and try to fulfill them all. You go through a day, and there are going to be many, many pressures coming at us, many responsibilities that we have to take care of. Each one of these demands on us has its own life, has its own energy. But our responsibility is to try to get our inner life in proper alignment. And then the stuff is going to roll off our back like water off the back of a duck. It's not going to phase us. We're going to be able to meet life on life's terms if our inner world is rightly related. And we'll get into that a little bit more deeply. He says, if only we could slip over into that center. Now, we dealt with this in some earlier episodes. He talked about two centers of consciousness: the ego center, which is what we're used to, where the ego is firmly in control and managing all sorts of stuff. But there's another center, and Jung talked about this as well. He talked about the self with a capital S, and that is the God center within us that wants us to become who we were meant to be. And then there's the little ego self, who is really too often running the show and getting into all sorts of trouble. Now, there's a place for the ego self, but its place is to be rightly related to the divine self. May sound a little complicated, but maybe as we get a little deeper into this, it'll become a bit more clear. If only we could find the silence, which is the source of sound. See, that's getting closer to the great reality within. We have seen and know some people who seem to have found this deep center of living, where the fretful calls of life are integrated, where no as well as yes can be said with confidence. We've seen such lives integrated, unworried by the tangles of close decisions, unhurried, cheery, fresh, positive. These are not people of dallying idleness, nor of obviously mooning meditation. They are busy carrying their full load as well as we, but without any chafing of the shoulders with the burden, with quiet joy and springing step. Surrounding the trifles of their daily life is an aura of infinite peace and power and joy. We are so strained and tense. With our burdened lives, they are so poised and at peace. So, we got some people in the world and in the program who seem to be managing all sorts of problems, but doing it from a very peaceful place inside. They don't fly off the handle, get pushed off the edge. They're grounded in themselves. And there's a peacefulness to it that carries them through the day, no matter what comes over them. And it goes on. I got 9 quotes. We're up to 3. If the Society of Friends, so he's a Quaker and he's addressing these talks to a group of Quakers, but they apply absolutely equally to those of us who are in the program. If the program has anything to say, it lies in this region primarily. Life is meant to be lived from a center, a divine center. Each one of us can live such a life of amazing power and peace and serenity, of integration and confidence and simplified multiplicity on one condition. That is, if we really want to. This program is not for those who need it. You've heard that said. This program is for those who want it, who are willing to do what it requires us to do. And what it requires of us is getting this relationship with the other center, the God within, getting that right, and then living from that place. There is a divine abyss within us all, a holy, infinite center, a heart, a life, who speaks in us and through us to the world. We have all heard this holy whisper at times. At times we have followed the whisper, and amazing equilibrium of life, amazing effectiveness of living set in. When I am rightly related to this voice, to this inner being, life goes smoothly. All hell may be breaking loose around me, but I'm okay. Why am I okay? Because I'm coming from a different center inside. It's new territory. Big Book calls it the fourth dimension of existence. It's the place that Wilson went to in his detox room. He was catapulted into a new dimension of consciousness. Well, that's what we're after in recovery. Not that we're going to be blistening sitting on a cloud, but we're going to be solid individuals because we're connected, rightly related to a power greater than ourselves who is working through us because he has business with us. Hope you're catching that. But too many of us have heeded the voice, the inner voice, only at times. Only at times have we submitted to his holy guidance. See, this thing is just ringing with two-way prayer. The purpose of the program is to get the guidance that we need, and to keep it simple, to access this center, listen to this center, be in constant communication with this center throughout the day, and that's going to bring peace. We have not counted this holy thing within us to be the most precious thing in the world. We have not surrendered all else to attend to it alone. Let me repeat. Most of us, I fear, have not surrendered all else in order to attend to the holy within. Purpose of the book, the purpose of the steps is to get us into a relationship with this power that resides within us. He's going to call it in this next paragraph, the beyond that is within. Such a beautiful expression, the beyond that is within each and every one of us. Well, if we can establish communication with that and keep in communication with that, that's the simple way to approach this program. I came across something from an Oxford group person, a woman in Australia, who wrote a little pamphlet, and she was describing the program. And she said, as simply as she could put it, and I think Dr. Bob would have said, "Woo, this is good stuff." I certainly did. She said, it's 3 words. It's 3 words. The first word is connection, that we are disconnected from this center. All right. So the first thing we got to do is make contact with it. And that's exactly what we do. First step says our lives are screwed up. They're unmanageable. I can't do it by myself. I need help. And this is where the connection starts. Step two, is it possible there's a God? Step three, we make a decision to turn to this God, turn our will and our lives over to this God. Not necessarily believing fully that there is such a thing, but let's hope there is, because I can't do it. So there's the connection, there's the link. And then the next set of steps, 4 through 9, is removing all of the barriers, all of the blockages between this self and myself, this center and my old center. All right. So steps 4 through 9, we write an inventory. All right. Take an assessment of our lives. What's wrong with our lives? And then we share this, all right, with God, with ourselves, with another human being. All three are players. And as we do this, the barriers are removed. You will feel that. If you've done a good fifth step, you felt it. You felt self getting out of the way and greater self now having access into your life. Book says, okay, you've done that. Now sit down for an hour and go over everything. And then we hit steps 6 and 7, which is what? Where Wilson said he put the four absolutes. He put them into 6 and 7. I remember when I stumbled onto that, it was like, boy, that puts them in a whole new light for me. I'm willing now to have all of me, all right, and to live my life on the basis of honesty and unselfishness and purity and love. You want to keep that contact going, live by those four standards. That's what the Oxford group was about. It's what early AA was about. And then 8 and 9, we clean up the mess that we've made. Make direct a list of all the people we've harmed, make direct amends to them. And as we do that, as we pay back, as we apologize, as we reform our lives, we feel that connection coming closer and closer and closer. There's the first 9 steps in 2 words. The final word is direction. And this is the thing that we're missing in our program today. Prayer and meditation is all about listening and finding the direction for my life, writing down the guidance. That's the word he uses here. Writing down the guidance that comes from being connected to this new source. Direction, connection, correction, direction. 12 steps in 3 words. Now, we're up to paragraph 5. Now, from such a holy center comes the commissions of life, our fellowship with God, issues in world concern. We now have to be outwardly directed. You see, we're outwardly directed. You have a change like this, it's going to naturally lead to work in the world. And you're going to know what your work is, and you're going to be energized. You're going to have the power to do it. What's the step say? 11. Praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. That's what we're talking about. We cannot keep the love of God to ourselves. It spills over. It makes us see the world's needs anew, see the needs of the world in a new light. We love people and we grieve to see them blind when they might be seeing, asleep with all the world's comforts when they ought to be awake and living sacrificially, accepting the world's goods as their right when they really hold them only in temporary trust. Don't wait till we're dying to let go. We're all going to die. That is the ultimate in unmanageability. Okay, that's what my first sponsor taught me. He said, you want to understand an unmanageable life, think of dying. And I think he was right. He was right. Appreciating that. puts my life in a different perspective. It's just like for many of us who are addicts listening to this, we've been given a gift of recovery. And that puts our lives in a different perspective. It's a gift and it's introduced us to a new life. And now naturally it wants to spill over into the lives of other people. It is because from this holy center we re-love people, or maybe even love them for the first time. Re-love our neighbors, or love them for the first time. That we are bestirred to be means of their awakening. The deepest need of men and women is not food and clothing and shelter, important as they are. The deepest need of men and women is God. We have mistaken the nature of poverty and thought it was economic poverty. No, it is poverty of soul. I've worked with some millionaires in my life. They've had every pleasure, security that money could offer them. Were they at rest, at peace? No. Why not? Because they hadn't connected with the God within. And if and when they did, and some certainly did, then they were transformed. And that's what the program is about. It's not about just not drinking. It's not a club where we get together and tell stories. It's a fellowship of redemption. It's a fellowship of transforming us at the very deepest levels. And it has the ability to do that. All right. And I've seen people in whom it has happened. They're out there, not in great numbers, but they're out there. They're not in great numbers in the church either. This is why, what's his name? Kelly, he's a mystic. And mystics are able to see into life, see into God, bridge the gap, and share with us what it's like to be in communion, connection with this other center. The greatest poverty is poverty of soul, deprivation of God's recreating loving peace. Peer into poverty and see if we are really getting down to the deepest needs in our economic salvation schemes. These are important, but they lie farther along the road, secondary steps towards world reconstruction. That's a powerful statement. World reconstruction. Now, I know the 12-step thing says, we're only interested in changing alcoholics or addicts or food addicts or whatever our 12-step fellowship may be. And that's the way it should be. I'm in agreement with that. That's the focus of our fellowships. But I don't think that's the focus of your life, nor is it the focus of my life. I think that needs to go deeper. That needs to be changing the world, and that's what the Oxford group was about. They set out to change the world one person at a time. Now, Wilson said, I'm only interested in changing drunks. And hang on to that in the beginning. I think that's really important and helpful. But after you've gotten some years under your belt, then maybe it goes beyond that. Maybe there's something beyond your 12-step world and my 12-step world. Maybe there's asking God, what is it that you're asking of my life? A lot of it may be to work in the 12-step world, but some of it may be to go beyond that. We have no opinions on outside issues. Well, maybe you do have some opinions on outside issues, and don't be afraid to take some action with regard to that. So many alcoholics, so many church people get into a very small world. I was talking to a guy about two-way prayer a couple of weeks ago, and he nailed it. He's about 40 years sober. And he said, I started doing two-way prayer, and this is revolutionary. My ears just perked up when he said that. This is revolutionary. He had it. Frank Bookman was a revolutionary. Gandhi was a revolutionary. They weren't reformers. Tweak it around the edges. This is being catapulted into a new dimension of consciousness. It's revolutionary. If it's not revolutionary, then it hasn't happened. Okay? It hasn't happened. Okay, paragraph 7. This love of people is well nigh as amazing as the love of God. Do we want to help people because we feel sorry for them or because we genuinely love them? The world needs something deeper than pity. It needs love. How trite that sounds. How real it is. Oh, it's a beautiful statement. How trite that sounds, that the world needs love, all right? But how true it is. You look at the world today, you look at the mess, the wars. Bookman was convinced that the only thing that was going to change the world, it wasn't a new economic system. It wasn't socialism or capitalism or communism that was going to change the world. The only thing that was going to change it was God. The only thing that was going to change it was if enough people start recentering their lives and giving them completely to this simple program. And we got to keep going back that it really is simple. But in our love of people, are we to be excitedly hurried, sweeping all men and tasks into our loving concern? No, that is God's function. But He, working within us, portions out His vast concern into bundles and lays on each of us our portion. These become our tasks. Life from the center is a heaven directed life. I used to sit in the bars with a theology teacher. I was teaching high school at the time. I was teaching history. This guy taught religion, theology, and we'd go to the bar and stay there till 2 o'clock in the morning discussing the problems of the world, as drunks are prone to do. One thing I learned later on was you'll never understand the meaning of life. You'll never understand the meaning of life, but you can understand the meaning of your life. Boy, that was an awakening. What is life asking of you? I mean, that was the first thing I learned when I came into the program. I mean, if I knew anything about God's will, there were two things I knew. One was don't drink. There's no way I could convince myself, even myself, that God's will for me was to drink. I got that one. The other one was don't run. See this thing through. Stay with it. Things are going to be tough, and they did get tough, but I didn't run. And those were the two things, the only two things that I really knew about God's will for me. That was enough. Don't drink, don't run. More will be revealed. Number 8. Much of our acceptance of multitudes of obligations, when the busyness comes in, is due to our inability to say no. We calculated that task had to be done, and we saw no one ready to undertake it. We calculated the need and then calculated our time and decided maybe we could squeeze it in somewhere. I see so many people who get so busy with their recovery work that they have no time to be by themselves, that's too scary. I have to suck it all off of you. I can't be alone. And that's the thing that in the beginning, when the Oxford group and when the early AAs were just getting going, the more important thing was not meetings. The more important thing was that people had a quiet time in the morning, a time to connect with this inner power, to feel the presence of this power in their lives, to communicate with this power, to get guidance from this power, to write it down, what the guidance was. I mean, this thing is just dripping with two-way prayer. So, I mean, that's the part we've lost from the program. It's a tremendous loss. And I think we have to get back to it. Okay, enough preaching. But the decision was a heady decision, not made within the sanctuary of the soul, the head and the heart. Someone measured it, it's 18 inches, they said, from the head to the heart, probably the longest distance in the world that you can understand all of this stuff. But unless you live all of this stuff, unless you become all of this stuff, it's just head knowledge. And that's not going to be good enough. It's not going to be satisfying enough. You know, you can shout it and scream it, but that doesn't do it. You know, what does it is living it. And what does it is living from love. All of life, I think, is a school of love, a school for love, a school about love. And we come here and we are charged by the Lord of life, call it what you will, the beyond that is within, to become more loving. Thomas Merton said he was asked, does he believe in an afterlife? And he said, I have to believe in it because it's so hard to begin learning how to love, you know, that I can't believe it ends when we die, that it goes on and on and on. All right. When we say yes or no to calls for service on the basis of heady decisions, we have to give reasons to ourselves and to others. But when we say yes or no to calls on the basis of inner guidance and whispered promptings from the center of our life, or on the basis of a lack of any inward rising of that life to encourage us in the call, we have no reason to give except one, the will of God as we discern it. Step 3, made a decision to turn our life and our will over to the care of God. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for what? The knowledge of God's will. This relationship is everything. I need an ego. I'd be psychotic without an ego. But that ego needs to be rightly related with the beyond that is within, the other center that exists within my own consciousness. It is accessible if I will be accessible to it. All right? If I will be accessible to it, then we have begun to live in guidance. And that's the piece that's been missing. I'm telling you, I didn't get this till I was 20 years sober. And when I started seeing what the program was like in the early days, my God, it was all about finding guidance for your life. That God is there to guide you, you know, but you got to listen and you got to write it down. And then, son of a gun, you got to do it. If you don't do it, the guidance is going to dry up. And I find, back to the book, he never guides us into an intolerable scramble of panting feverishness. In other words, peace should follow me into it. Even when it's tough stuff that I'm dealing with, there should be an element of peacefulness attached to it. The cosmic patience becomes in part our patience. God manifests through us. God becomes us. The separation between this little center of self and the greater center of self, it diminishes over time. All right? I become whole, W-H-O-L-E, more whole than holy. All right? We are not saints, but the point is we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. After all, God is at work in the world. It is not we alone who are at work in the world, frantically finishing a work to be offered to God. Oh, look, God, what I did today. Aren't I something? No, look what you did through me. Aren't you something? You want to know peace? That's what it kind of sounds like. All right? It sounds like humility. It sounds like being rightly related. Here's the final one. Life from the center, capital C, life from the center, is a life of unhurried peace and power. You know, lack of power is our dilemma, but there is one who has all power. Now, am I connected to that power? Am I plugged into that power? That's the question. It is simple. It is simple. Bob was right. It is simple. It is serene. It is amazing. It is triumphant. It is radiant. It takes no time, but it occupies all our time. And it makes our life programs new and overcoming. We need not get frantic. He is at the helm. And when our little day is done and we lie down quietly in peace, for all is well. All is well. There was a priest in recovery named Ernie Larson, ex-priest. He was a counselor up in Minnesota, and I read a number of his books. He was good. He was really good, and he was simple. Kept it simple, and his simple directive for looking at what we've been talking about here for 40 minutes. Who's driving the bus? That was the question he asked himself all during the day. Who's driving the bus? It's very simple. We have the ability to stand outside of ourselves and look in at ourselves. And if you have any degree of honesty, you will see who is in that bus driver's seat. Is it God or is it me? More times than not, you're going to find out that it's you, particularly if it's not peaceful behind the driver's seat. If it's not peaceful in the bus, who's driving the bus? And the beautiful thing about this thing, the beautiful thing about this program, I've got 50 some odd years sober, but I promise you, there can be a new person who's got 50 minutes sober and they are more advanced than I am. Why? Because they're more aligned, they're more surrendered, they're more connected, and therefore they're more directed. All right? They got it. They got it. One pioneer said, we sometimes, not all the time, we can sit at the foot of the newcomer and say, "Teach me," because they can. If they're coming from their heart, if their lives have fallen apart, if they're then willing to go to any length to recover, any length at all. That's the beautiful thing about this program. It is so simple. We complicate the hell out of it. We got to get back to the simplicity. Connect, correct, direct. When the directions come, you get your marching orders and you go and you do. Write down the directions and then check them off at the end of the day. I've just gotten so much out of Kelly. He died at a young age. The good die young. I'll probably go on forever. The rate I'm going. He's got a lot to teach. He's got a lot to teach. So I've used his book 3 or 4 times. I've gone through it, part of my morning quiet time. I suggest it strongly. You can get used copies on the web. Well worth a few bucks. Just read a few paragraphs, stop, and soak in it. That's what the mystics are for. They've been to the other side and they're coming back and trying to tell us what it's like over there. So I hope this series was helpful for you. If it was, let a friend know. I don't know all the fancy things you're supposed to do. You're supposed to ring bells, subscribe, do all that. And if you got a few bucks, contributions really help keep this thing going. So really appreciate it. Hope it was helpful. Be back with a new series next week. God bless and keep coming back.